From inside the Banner offices along the Inner Harbor, it is the Banner Baseball Show. Paul Mancano and John Meoli live on a Tuesday in July, and we got a lot to talk about. Here on today's show, we are going to discuss some unfortunate news to Grayson Rodriguez's recovery from injuries. We're going to talk about Coby Mayo and why he's not playing for the Baltimore Orioles as much as he should be. We'll also go through every one of the Orioles' potential trade pieces and discuss whether he will be traded, whether he should be traded, and of course, we'll have our minor league check-in, all that and much, much more. But first, let's get a quick word from our sponsors.
For the fifth year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
All right, John, for longtime listeners of this podcast, and by long time, I mean if you listened to last week's episode, you heard John berate me for never having seen a Fast and Furious movie.
That's not what happened.
Let the record show that you were not pleased.
Yeah, I wasn't happy, but you know.
Berate may go too far. But now you've put in our doc that you actually messaged me last week. And speaking of lore, everybody said, Paul, you really got to get into the Fast and Furious movies because the lore is terrific.
It's good lore.
I'm glad that our Banner Baseball Show now is developing its own lore and bringing back the same topics and storylines. And John, you messaged me that our podcast itself is much like the Fast and Furious movies. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So there's a couple of reasons why. The first reason, and not the main reason, but a reason, is that you used to work at a television network and multimedia company called the Mid-Atlantic Sports Network.
Correct. I used to work at Masson.
So you were basically a cop. You worked for the state. You were.
I'm sure everybody will love to hear that who works for Masson.
Good. You were not, even though we were, it's like in the first movie, I guess we're doing spoilers, but Brian O'Connor is a cop who comes in with the gang, and
Sure.
the gang is, stealing stuff and driving real fast and causing, the cops are trying to get him. And I felt like, I feel like there's that dynamic too, where we had a bit of a feeling out process once you left the force.
Sure.
And now you are with the gang, which is kind of how things work in the Fast movies, that you are on opposite sides and then you become part of the gang.
Sure.
And that was really where I was going with it, is that, as in my previous life as a at the Baltimore Sun, and I guess now here at the Banner, but you came to the Banner pretty quickly in its existence on the sports front. There's just like, I'm very much like, you are either on my team or you are not on my team.
Yeah.
And there was a long time where you were not on my team. And now you are on my team. So I think this makes it a little bit like Hobbs and Shaw, which is kind of a spinoff where The Rock and Jason Statham, are not on the same team. Both not originally part of the crew. Right. Both become part of the crew. And they also kind of have some heat with Vin Diesel in real life. So they made their own movie, and it's like kind of like a buddy comedy spinoff. Gotcha. And that's where we are right now. Hobbs and Shaw.
I like that comparison a lot.
You don't like the cop part?
I'm not as wild about that, but I'm less wild about us being criminals. Are we criminals? Are the Fast and Furious characters criminals? Are they just into street racing, or do they steal stuff? What do they even do?
They are basically now a global
crime syndicate?
No, like paramilitary, like outside of the government, like helping shadow forces get the bad guys who are really bad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they are good. They started out as common criminals for the most part.
Sure.
And,
would you say
now they help the government to get the real bad guys?
Would you say that in the Hobbs and Shaw comparison, am I Vin Diesel or am I Jason Statham?
So Vin Diesel not really in Hobbs and Shaw.
Oh,
so
okay.
The Rock and Vin Diesel.
Oh, Rock. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
The Rock and Jason Statham.
Oh, gosh,
I get my bald strong men confused.
Yeah, The Rock and Vin Diesel, I believe there's some heat there. So,
okay.
So they just decided to make a different movie where they didn't have to interact with each other.
Gotcha.
Worked out well for the sake of art. I think you would maybe be Jason Statham. But,
okay.
But I also, I'm also not The Rock.
I don't know.
Except for
that comparison before to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody I know says this guy.
Is he like The Rock? And you're like, yeah,
John
absolutely.
Meoli, sort of like the Rock of your,
Yeah. Just spending a lot of time with Moana. That's one thing that The Rock and I both have in common at this stage in our lives.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great comparison because, we're joining forces when, we weren't opposing forces, but we certainly were trying to accomplish different things, or at times trying to accomplish the same things for different people.
Yeah. And I am, this is something, it's good to know about yourself. If you can name it, you can tame it type thing. Either you're on my team or you're not on my team. And I'm very, once you have been on my team, you are always on my team. But until you are on my team, you are not on my team. And I just have, it's not an attractive trait, but it's a trait that I own.
Having covered the Orioles while you were also covering the Orioles, I can confirm this.
Yeah, I was probably not the nicest person.
No,
but
you're competitive, and that's what I think that the Hobbs and Shaw, the Fast and Furious movies, I think those are the kind of characters that they are as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about some more competitive guys. Let's talk about the Baltimore Orioles, who are, I don't know, not really competing.
At one point, last time we recorded, maybe.
I don't know if they're all that competitive right now. They're certainly not competing for a playoff spot, and they have gotten piece of bad news after piece of bad news. Piece of good news, Adley Rutschman is going to be going to AAA Norfolk, I believe, to work on his rehab assignment and hopefully get back up to the big leagues at some point. Piece of bad news is his one-time, former multi-time battery mate, Grayson Rodriguez, is shut down again with elbow soreness. And this is, I believe, the third time this season where he has tried to ramp back up and been shut down. It's now July 22nd. This is not good news. If you we're hoping to see Grayson Rodriguez in an Orioles uniform later this season. And it's gotten to the point now, John, where there have been so many different things that have flared up we talked on a previous show with Danielle Allen talk about this, about how it's really all connected. And Grayson Rodriguez is doing everything he can to change his mechanics in order to correct this issue. But clearly he has not found a solution yet between the lat, the shoulder, the elbow, the triceps. So many different things have flared up for him. It's gotten to the point now where not only do I not expect him to pitch in the big leagues at some point this season, I think if you're Michael Elias and you're this front office, I don't think you can go into next season expecting to get anything from Grayson Rodriguez.
Yeah, it's definitely gotten to that point. And I don't know how they would view it. I mean, I don't know how they would view it in terms of roster building, but there is something happening physically that needs to be fixed, needs to be changed. Lats are tricky, and you don't want to get your shoulder surgically repaired as a pitcher. That's basically, not to say the elbow surgeries are okay or simple, but it's a little more knowable. It's a little more manageable. There is a longer track record of people coming back from that. I think, and Danielle mentioned this, I believe, that there's not a lot of, it's not the same recovery as you have a Tommy John when you're dealing with Grayson Rodriguez dealing with, because Kyle Bradish went under the knife in last June, and he knew what he would be doing today if everything was going well 13 months ago.
Exactly.
There is not that path back for Grayson Rodriguez, as it seems like we're dealing with, while interconnected, two different things. And
you just said if you can name it, you can tame it. He can't name it right now.
That's exactly right. And there's no substitute for being and feeling healthy. And when I think he at this point knows when he's not, I think, I believe it was last year was the last time we saw him when he was warming up and in the drop and said, it doesn't feel right. He knows. And no matter what it is feeling, he knows when something is not feeling the way you want it to. And it's really challenging. I mean, he made it. He made it to the big leagues. He pitched really well for 2+ years. 2+ years, I believe. We can 20. I'm trying to figure out
2 years.
2 years, we'll say. And
he pitched for 3 seasons, but was good for 2+ years.
Yeah, and but this is the type of thing, I don't want to lump him in with the Dylan Bundys and Hunter Harveys, but those guys both had.
Sorry, he pitched for 2 years. Sorry.
Yeah, they both had amorphous elbow-ish injuries that didn't result in Tommy John 4 years. Could they have? Who knows? I believe it's Hunter Harvey. I could be mixing them up, but Hunter Harvey, I believe, it was always elbow soreness. It was always elbow soreness, and you have an MRI, and it would look intact. So they would be like, "All right, let's rehab it. Let's figure this out." When they finally went in and did it, the doctor was like, "Oh, that's why it looked intact." Like, it was basically like mush, but it was intact mush. Like, it wasn't like your normal elbow ligament, but it was literally mush. But you couldn't tell that from the outside. And as we're going through this process with Grayson Rodriguez, and it's not, I don't think it was the UCL area last time. We don't really have any information. It's just, it feels frustrating in all the same ways, in that there's this guy who should be pitching well on the Orioles and is not.
Yeah, and it's just as a guy that the Orioles did not acquire an ace this past offseason, and all the pressure was shifted to Grayson Rodriguez to become that ace. And him not appearing in a single game, we've joked about how we're going to, at the end of the season, make a list of the frustrating things about the 2025 Orioles.
A 10-part podcast series brought to you by the Baltimore Banner.
Grayson Rodriguez's injury issues will be in the top 10 and perhaps in the top 5, because that's how good he was last year when he was on 3.86 ERA, and how much his injury status has crippled this season. It has really taken them down. And it's something that we're going to be talking a lot about this offseason as the Orioles attempt to replace a bunch of starters in that rotation. They're going to have to come up with some kind of plan. They're going to have 5-6 guys that they feel good about going into next year, maybe 9 or 10. And whether Grayson Rodriguez is on that list and whether he's pitching in spring training and what he does this offseason, we're going to have to dissect every ounce of it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Coby Mayo, because this is a guy that is at the big league level, that is healthy, that simply is not on the baseball field, and I'm struggling to understand why. We are on July 22nd, and yes, the All-Star break just happened, so they haven't played a full slate of games during the month of July. But they played a lot of games this month. Coby Mayo has gotten 11 plate appearances the entire month. He's played in 5 games. He started 2. I don't understand why Coby Mayo is on the big league roster right now and sitting. This team is opting, when they are facing a left-handed pitcher, they stick as many righties in the lineup as possible. They go with Ramón Urías. They go with Tyler O'Neill. And Coby Mayo simply is not part of their plans for playing baseball games right now.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue, it seems like, is that they have to choose between whether he or Ramón Urías plays first in those situations, because Jordan Westburg is not coming out of the lineup. Jackson Holliday is now an everyday player. Gunnar Henderson plays every day, no matter what. And when you go down the line, it just gets a little trickier to find that spot. Now, the Tyler O'Neill of it all, I'll separate out a little bit. The guy's just got to play. He's not going to not play against lefties, even though he's been not productive in the at-bats that he's gotten. But
yeah. Tyler O'Neill signed a 3-year deal for all intents and purposes. He's
here, and they got to figure it out.
Yes, he has the opt-out after this year. Whether you want Tyler O'Neill to be on this team or not going forward, and I think there are a lot more people in the latter camp than there are the former camp, the way that you get him off the team, and we'll talk about whether you can possibly trade him, hint you can't, during this trade deadline, whether you want him off the team or not would require him getting his trade value back up or getting his free agent value back up, which revolves around him playing. I mean, he can't just be benched and then hit 182 and his stats at the end of the year are, well, this team went away from him completely. Because guess what? He's not going to opt out of his contract. Yeah. I still don't think there's much he can do in the final 2 months of the season to get him to convince himself that he will have a fertile free agent market if he opts out. However, they have to keep playing. He has to keep playing. He has to get better, because if he's going to be on this team for the next 2 years, he has to be a big piece of it. The Orioles have to hope that they can get something more out of him. Or if they want him to hit free agency, opt out after the 2025 season, he's got to believe that he has increased his value enough to get another contract from another team.
Yeah, and I'm, I've said a lot that I've kind of held out, though. Like, maybe it's Gary Sanchez. Maybe he was just really hurt, and now he's not, and it will be him. And I think there's a chance he could do that second half. But where Coby Mayo is concerned, it feels like they're delaying the inevitable. in a weird way. But and there's this like pretty much everything revolves around the trade deadline right now. And all these questions will be answered, but also Ryan Mountcastle can be activated from the injury list then. So that's Ryan Mountcastle's job that Coby Mayo is doing. If Ryan Mountcastle was in Coby Mayo's roster spot right now, this Ramon Urías would be playing. It would be Ryan Mountcastle. And Coby Mayo was here basically as the Ryan Mountcastle deputy. That's what it was. It became his job to be Ryan Mountcastle once Ryan Mountcastle did his hamstring. And there's not really any good there is a good reason. Like Ramon Urías, I am on the higher end of just like Ramon Urías appreciators in the
I
world.
am too. Yeah.
I've constantly said that like the way that people talked about how good Jorge Mateo was for like the weeks at a time when he would hit and ignoring like the months at a time when he wouldn't. That's how Ramon Urías actually is. Like he just goes out there and like does the job and picks it, gets some hits every once in a while, and more often than not, he's good. One of the worst months of Orioles' career is this one when all of his plate appearances are coming at the expense of Coby Mayo, which is weird. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good, but I'll chalk it up to optics. I'll chalk it up to, until this team, there's going to be a day when like 5 guys who are in that clubhouse at 3:00 in the afternoon or at 11:00 at night after a game aren't going to be there the next day. And that will be the moment when it's okay to play Coby Mayo every day over Ramon Urías. And that doesn't really make a difference at this stage of the season when they are where they are, and we're going to get to that point anyways. But that's kind of what I feel like this is. We're not doing this because we're not out of it, and all of a sudden something will happen, and there will be no more ability to believe that, and they will just stop believing it, and they will stop doing things they will stop making decisions based on that.
Yeah, in about a week's time,
Yeah.
a lot of these guys in the clubhouse could be gone, and there will be no excuse to not play Coby Mayo. So this is probably a problem that we won't be talking about in 2 weeks' time. I expect Coby Mayo will be an everyday starter once or close to it once a lot of these guys get dealt at the deadline.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, it is just a little bit frustrating. Tony Mansolino was asked about it yesterday, and he said, quote, "We're not fools. We understand caring here and him losing some at-bats down in AAA. The choice we've made is to get him at-bats here a certain amount, as much as we can, but also to watch the game, slow the game down, and mature." To me, that means that they don't feel like they feel he's better served sitting and watching, i.e. a rookie quarterback watching a veteran than he is getting into the game, which for a guy that is in his second big league season feels a little bit like they're slow playing him, like they have the training wheels on. And we were sitting here talking about Samuel Basayo, who's 20 years old and is playing a premier defensive position at catcher, and that's a very mental position. That's a position that takes a lot of toll on you physically and mentally. I would understand it more. It's Coby Mayo playing first base. I just don't fully understand an environment right now where, they're trying to win games, but I think they all understand that guys are going to get traded and they're not going to make the playoffs. I just don't fully understand it. And for those who have said, well, he's only played 5 games in the month of July, and he doesn't have a hit in those games. And I did say earlier he made 2 starts. He's made 3 starts, but he's only got those 11 plate appearances in the month of July, and he is over in those 11 plate appearances. How do you expect him to produce if he's not in the lineup?
Yeah, and that's something that, I think there's a lot of there's been plenty of examples of people pointing out how much work he's doing defensively with John Mabry at first base, and all that type of stuff is happening, and that's all well and good. And it's just
before every game, I see him doing work with John Mabry or somebody else defensively, which is great.
Yes, and that's something he did before first base became his only position. He's incredibly hard worker, and he's not going to let this impact him. But it's just, of all the things that are happening right now, this feels like the most curious because there is a real reason is that Ramon Urías is a Gold Glover and also is having a bad July, but he had a good June. Like you could reasonably say, like I would play him, but it doesn't. It just feels like it's ignoring like the broader context of what's happening.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're 20 minutes in and we haven't even gotten to our main segment. So let's get into the meat of this podcast, which is going through all of the players on this roster that could be traded. And we'll discuss whether they should be traded if we were Mike Elias, whether we would deal this guy out and whether they will be, trying to put ourselves in Elias' shoes and predict whether he will or not. And our colleague Andy Kuska broke down these guys into different tiers based on what he was hearing from scouts across the league. So for those who saw the tier system that we posted on our social channels, Alt Banner Sports on Instagram, at Alt Banner Sports on X, there were some strong reactions to the different tiers that we had guys in.
Oh, yeah?
In terms of some trade value. There have been a lot of strong reactions on social media to just about everything when it comes to this team. But that tier system was based on what Andy was hearing from scouts. And I also think it's interesting because these guys' value changes pretty much week to week, not game to game, but week to week. When a guy like Tomoyuki Sugano goes through the struggles that he has over the last 6 starts, that puts him in a completely different tier and perhaps out of the tier system entirely. When somebody like Ramón Urías goes through the kind of hot June that he had, that rockets him up into a lot of different categories. So this is all fluctuating. All of these categories are fluctuating, and we're going to be closely watching these guys as we get closer to the deadline. Tier 1 had 2 players in it. It was Ryan O'Hearn and Félix Bautista, meaning that these 2 guys are the most coveted by teams around the league in terms of trade pieces. One guy is on an expiring contract. That's Ryan O'Hearn. One guy is not, and that's Félix Bautista. To me, it makes a whole lot much more sense to deal Ryan O'Hearn than it does Félix Bautista, because Ryan O'Hearn, I've said before, I would love if the Orioles could yo-yo him, could send him out in a deal and watch him finish the season with another team, make a nice playoff run, and then re-sign him in the offseason. For Félix Bautista, if you want him to be your closer in 2026, and if you want to be a good team that is winning a lot of games, that is winning a lot of close games, you need Félix Bautista on your roster. Where do you fall, John, on these 2 guys? Will they, should they trade?
Yeah, I mean, Félix is just a hard no for me. I can't see a world, and I think Mike Elias has been pretty clear that people who are going to be here beyond this year are not really on the table, and not really their focus. I don't think that they are going to pursue that in any meaningful way. I do think that, if you blow them away, sure, why not? Like, they would think about it, but I don't think that's something that they would or should do. Ryan O'Hearn is a completely different story. This is the type of thing that you do. You trade this guy when they are nearing free agency and you're not going to make the playoffs, and there's going to be plenty of suitors for him. I think there would be more suitors for April, May Ryan O'Hearn than June, July Ryan O'Hearn. I think that's fair to say, but there are good at bats in there that a playoff team could use. They will value those, and I think you kind of take the future piece out of that. Like, will his people answer the Orioles calls in November? Of course.
If the Orioles offer him the most money, he will probably sign with them.
Yes, I don't think anybody's going to be super precious about this. Ryan O'Hearn is a pro who has gotten to this point by working really, really hard from a point of not really looking like he had a major league career. So the idea that, and this has probably been a hard season for him, if we're being honest. Like, he's the one who is wearing all these losses on his Falcon after they go out and get their brains bashed in, and he's the one that's there, and he got 2 hits, and they had 4 as a team, so he gets to talk to the media, and he's doing all this, and I'm sure he would love to be a part of this going forward, but it will be a better situation for pretty much anybody who is not on this team in 2 weeks to finish the season out, and he could boost his value even further by doing what he has been doing this season on a bigger stage.
Yeah, and in terms of Félix Bautista, I'm also in agreement that this should be a no. The only comp I could really find is when the Milwaukee Brewers traded Josh Hader when he had a year and a half of team control, and the Brewers, I believe, were competing for a playoff spot at this point.
Yeah.
That was a very Brewers move where they tried to cash in on the guy when he had a lot of value left, and they got 4 players back. To me, you should be looking to compete next year. And if you are, then don't trade away your all-star closer, who should be better in 2026 than he has been in 2025, because his velocity should be higher. He's another year removed from Tommy John. It just does not make much sense to me to trade out somebody who could be a huge piece and could be an all-star again in a year's time. In terms of Ryan O'Hearn, I think this should be a no-brainer. If you get back, if teams are willing to make offers for him that you think are fair value, and they should, because those are at bats from the left-handed side of the plate that certainly will be useful for teams that are in the playoffs. I think that you should deal Ryan O'Hearn, and he's a pro. He understands it. He's been answering questions about it all year long. And he's one of the few guys on this team that has overperformed expectations. You have to cash in on that while you have the time. All right.
I would just want to point out, I'm looking it up and I don't have the answer in front of you. Josh Hader was making a ton of money at that point.
Yeah. Which Felix Bautista is not. Yeah. And Felix Bautista is 30 years old. And I know fans might look at the fact that they traded Brian Baker, who had years of control left right before the draft. That was one of those instances where we broke that down. We said, that is a premier draft asset. It was right before the draft. That was an offer that the Orioles couldn't refuse. And Felix Bautista is not in the same category as Brian Baker. Brian Baker is having a great year. However, Felix Bautista was an all-star and the best closer in baseball not that long ago. So to me, Felix Bautista should be pretty much close to untouchable.
Yeah, Brian Baker moonwalked.
What's that?
Brian Baker moonwalked.
He did moonwalk, and that was sick.
Yeah.
And he did tip his cap to Orioles fans, or to the Orioles dugout, I should say, when he pitched against them over the weekend, which was a nice gesture. All right, the second tier, according to Andy's tier list, has Seranthony, Domínguez, and Charlie Morton. One a reliever, one a starting pitcher. Both, to me, should be very much available to other teams who call.
Yes. Yes, I think that I would probably, I don't know if I would put Gregory Soto in this tier too, but I think that Anthony Domínguez, especially given how he's been pitching over the last 2 months or so, since he really got the splitter down, it's the type of pitcher who, if you threw his name out there in the water and told teams you have a half hour to get us your best offer, you would probably get a dozen really good offers, because there's not a lot to lose if you're that team. There's lots of gaining for the Orioles. I've said it a million times, and they might have already done it with the Brian Baker trade, but like trading a reliever and getting something more than a reliever back is the best kind of trade that a team can make. And I think that Seranthony Domínguez is the type of pitcher that teams will want at this time of year. Charlie Morton, the same thing. There are moments, obviously, I would want, if I was Charlie Morton, to have a really good start next time up and to get put in bubble wrap until the trade deadline. That would be what I would prefer if I was Charlie Morton. But he has done so much work. I mean, we probably can't say enough about the way he's turned the season around.
Yeah.
And if this is it for him, I know we're going year to year all the time when you're at that stage of your career, but if Charlie Morton wants to end his career on a high note, he should do it on a team that can be playing in October. I think he deserves that.
Absolutely. Charlie Morton, his last start out didn't exactly help that trade value, gave up 7 earned runs in 5 1/3 at the Rays, but the 11 starts before that, a 2.61 ERA. So he has certainly turned his season around and increased his trade value. To think that he would be tradable 3 months ago would have been laughable at the time. And now he has turned into somebody that maybe you could get something. I don't know what you could get, but it's worth exploring. So for both Seranthony Domínguez and Morton, I'm in agreement. They're both impending free agents. Charlie Morton should not be a member of the 2026 Orioles. I'm sorry. Just don't need to try that again.
That'll be a fun January podcast, huh?
Bring him back, baby. And Seranthony Domínguez, maybe another guy that you yo-yo. He has been great for you for the first half of the year, and he'll hit the free agent market, and every team will be available to sign him. Maybe you bring him back then. But in the meantime, you should try to get him on a winning team and try to extract something from him.
Absolutely.
All right, third tier. Cedric Mullins is the only member of this tier. He's 30 years old. He is coming into Monday. He was hitting just .218 with 13 homers and an OPS just over 700. Another impending free agent. Should they trade Cedric Mullins, John?
Will they? Yes. Yes. Can I flip those? I don't know.
Yes and yes, or no and no.
Wait, it's tricky. I mean, Cedric Mullins is the hardest kind of player to trade. That's just the fact of the matter. He means more, and that's not to say that matters in the front office calculus. They traded Trey Mancini, who again
clubhouse leader.
Yeah,
fan
matters
favorite.
more here than he does wherever he is going.
That was like when Mancini got traded to the Astros. There were so many fans that were like, the Astros team will not appreciate Trey Mancini the way that we have.
Yeah.
And they're absolutely right. But it's a business and they have to explore these opportunities.
Yeah. And there were two good, the Orioles got two good pitchers back for 2 months of Trey Mancini. Like, you just do that. You're going to do that. You're going to strip out the sentiment. You're going to do that. Cedric Mullins is in a similar boat where you have to have it be worth their while. And I think that is where it's going to get a little bit tricky, honestly. Cedric Mullins does a lot of things really well, and he's having a tougher stretch performance-wise than he has at the beginning of the season. He started the season on fire, and it's been more challenging since then. I think that's fair to say. You need to have the value be met. I think the bar is higher for Cedric Mullins than it is for a Seranthony Domínguez, for Charlie Morton, for Gregory Soto, for anyone else. It's not to say that he is worth the most, but I think your standard needs to be like, let's get $1.25 on the dollar for this one, because it's going to be unpleasant doing this. If you get 80 cents on the dollar for Charlie Morton, who cares?
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, the Orioles will care, but like nobody's going to be pumping their fists at the sky being like, why did you make such a bad trade?
Yeah.
That will happen if it's a bad trade for Cedric Mullins. And I think that's a really tricky position for the Orioles to be in. That's not going to stop them. I think it's just going to elevate the bar they have for the return.
Well, and I think the Orioles, like you said, did get $1.25. They got a lot back for Trey Mancini.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if Michael Elias would have done that move, which was very unpopular at the time, if he didn't get back so much value. And I think Jorge Lopez fell in the same category, because the Orioles got 4 pitchers back for Jorge Lopez at the time. And that was another move that was unpopular. But they got so much value back. For Cedric Mullins, I just don't know if those kind of offers are going to be there. He has negative WAR according to Baseball Reference right now. Part of that is due to the fact that for some reason they have his defensive metrics much lower. I think he's having a fine defensive season.
Yeah, I mean, those are I don't really have any. Yeah, sorry for interrupting.
No. It's also interesting when you have the eye test not matching the metrics when it comes to defense. And I think this is one of those cases with Cedric Mullins. I have not seen any steep decline by any stretch from him athletically or from him defensively. But center fielders who are on expiring contracts don't really get traded too often at the deadline. It's just not a position where too many teams are looking. And if they are in a good position, they're often looking for bench bats. They are looking for corner outfielders. They're not often looking for light hitting center fielders, which at this point, Cedric Mullins is. You know, he's probably not good enough to be a defensive replacement at this point. He's 30, and he is not hitting enough for him to be considered a quality bench bat. So getting a sizable return for that guy is going to be difficult. And you would say, all right, well, you know, just getting anything for him is better than watching him walk in the offseason, because at this point, I talked about a month ago offering them qualifying offer. I don't think they do that at this point unless he turns his season around, because I think he would snap up that qualifying offer in a heartbeat. I think that's more than he would get in free agency right now, unfortunately. So if you're viewing at it from a cold and calculated position, you could say, well, then just get whatever you can for him. If you get back an 18-year-old kid in the Dominican Summer League, that's better than watching him leave in free agency for nothing. But there is going to be PR backlash if you trade him. And then think about in years down the line when people think about, and how much does the front office really care about this? They probably shouldn't care that much about this, but it's a factor.
Yeah.
Think about years down the line when people look back and they're like, Cedric Mullins, what a great player he was for the Orioles. And can you believe they got nothing for him when they traded him to the Astros? Can you believe that they traded him to the Kansas City Royals and they got some bum that never even made it to AA? Like, that is something that people will think about. It's almost better PR-wise to let him leave for nothing than it is to get back some lottery chip that doesn't turn into anything.
Yeah. I mean, there's two schools of thought. I was trying to think of, and this is a good one. So Jonathan Scope traded to the
Milwaukee.
Brewers.
Yeah.
Do you remember any of those players?
2 players. Evan Phillips, was he part of it?
That was the Braves for Kevin Gausman.
For Kevin Gausman. Okay. I don't remember the 2 players that were traded. The Orioles traded 5 guys away and got 15 back.
That actually is a bad example because I do remember those. There was Jonathan VR. I don't know why.
Oh, they got VR back.
Yeah, I was actually thinking he was traded to Detroit where he ultimately signed.
Yes.
And
then
was
played first base.
Yeah. Yeah. But then there was like Luis Ortiz, that the right-hander who was slandered by various management figures in the Baltimore Orioles for a long time, and then didn't end up panning out. And I feel like there was somebody else
in this
like a young infielder, but like that's the type of player who's like, what was that? Like, what'd you get? That was a bad example because Jonathan VR was a big leaguer, but
Jonathan VR was like better than Jonathan Scope was.
Yeah,
after they made that trade, weirdly.
Yeah.
Will Jonathan VR be the last Orioles player ever to play all of 162 games?
It's quite possible. It's quite possible.
That's something I'm watching closely.
That was memorable. That was a real moment. That was a bad example. I will say though that
the 3 players, by the way, Gene Carmona, Luis Ortiz, and Jonathan VR.
Yeah. There are a lot of examples of what you're talking about of like, the Andrew Cashner trade. Nobody cared about Andrew Cashner, but like it was 2 guys that
Dominican signings,
2 young,
I think,
like international signings, who didn't amount to a lot in their pro careers. I think one of them, Elio Prado, got like minor league Rule 5 this year. But I think it's important what you said about any value is more than letting somebody walk for free. And I think that's important to point out. We're talking about getting like $1.25 on the dollar. It might be a weak dollar. We might not be talking about like a strong, tariffs and whatnot. Like we might not be talking about
Let's not get political here, John.
Yeah, I know. We might not be talking about the strongest dollar is kind of what I'm trying to get at. So they will view that will matter. It's like getting a little back for a small amounts of present day or long-term value is something that they would think about.
Yeah.
It's just going to be tricky from the optics standpoint for Cedric Mullins.
Elio Prado and Nolberth Romero, both signees out of Venezuela.
Nolberth Romero is actually still around.
Really?
Yeah, he plays on every team. He just I think he gets 4 hats and brings an infield glove, an outfield glove, and a first base glove, and he gets moved around.
He's played 4 games at AAA Norfolk this year.
Yeah, he gets moved around everywhere. Spending a lot. Look at he played at every affiliate last year and the year before that.
Yeah. Wow.
It's a fascinating existence. I've, maybe put it on the list of like, we're about to have a couple dark months of like, I don't know who's going to read this story, but I want to write it stories of like, Nolberth Romero. Like, how do you get to be that guy who's like the org filler who just like, and how long do you like,
I don't think anybody's watching this or listening to this podcast anyway, because we just brought up Elio Prado and Nolberth Romero anyway.
Yeah.
So, it's all just going into the void. All right, that's the 3rd tier.
Love the void.
The 4th tier, and then we'll get to guys that did not make the tier list. 4th tier consists of Gregory Soto, Ramón Laureano, Ramón Urías, and Andrew Kittredge. You have a couple guys on here, Gregory Soto and Andrew Kittredge, that are relievers that are on expiring contracts. To me, that is an automatic yes. That is, if you can get anything back for those guys, you deal them. And I think the Orioles will try to if they get strong enough offers. The other 2 guys are interesting, Ramón Laureano and Ramón Urías, because Ramón Laureano can be under team control next year if you want him. $6.5 million team option for the 2026 season. And Ramón Urías is also under team control through 2026. Automatic yeses on Kittredge and Gregory Soto. But for Laureano and Urías, I tend towards saying I would not trade them because, again, if you want to be competitive in 2026, I think both these guys are valuable.
Yeah, and Kittredge has an option himself for $9 million next year. I think that
team option,
yeah, and I think that sways it a little bit for me, and just in the part where there's going to be a lot of work to do, and for him and Laureano, you just kind of say like, we are going to need a substance like you next year. Why don't we just have that substance be you? So I think both of those guys, Gregory Soto obviously will be traded. I don't think there's any world where he doesn't get traded. And I don't know that you're going to be holding out for 125 cents on the dollar there. Urías is tricky because there is not really that type of guy behind him. Jorge Mateo is injured and nearing free agency himself, I believe, if not right there. Yeah, he's got 1 year left. He's got a club option for next year as well. So it could we could finally 5 years later get the either or of those two figured out once and for all. But I'm hesitant to say that any of those guys would get traded. The Orioles have shopped Ramón Urías before. I'm sure that's not a surprise to anyone. I don't think it's even really a secret, but they also have always wanted a lot for him because he's a player who is valuable and who can do a lot of things. And all the things he does well, screen well on a spreadsheet. And to get commensurate value for what that value is, you need to give up a lot in a trade. And people aren't going to give up a lot in a trade for Ramón Urías. If they wanted to, they would have already. So they are not going to now. But I think Laureano is the most interesting one because you can probably get the most for him you could probably get more for 2 months of Laureano playing the way he is than you could for any of the hitters that we've talked about so far. And for that reason, you have to think about it.
So for Kittredge, because of that $9 million option, are you saying keep him?
Yes, I am saying keep him if you're trading away the rest of the bullpen because you don't have I don't think Yennier Cano can be counted among the reliable setup men anymore. I'm not talking about for the 2025 Orioles, but like if you are going into next season knowing that these relievers who you're trading are not going to be there and you take Andrew Kittredge out of the mix, you're looking at a bullpen that includes Félix Bautista and Yennier Cano and Keegan Aiken and
that's about it.
That's about it.
Yeah. You could, in theory, project some of these starting pitching prospects to move their way into the bullpen.
Yes.
Maybe Tyler Wells. But other than that, you're right. It's a lot of question marks.
Yes. So if that's what you're going into next season with, you are probably going to end up spending $10 million on a good reliever at some point anyways. You probably would do that even if Andrew Kittredge is on your roster. So you might as well have as long as Andrew Kittredge is, I think we saw with like Jacob Webb where they were like, I don't really know about this. Like maybe not. Danny Coulomb, same thing. Like maybe not. Maybe we don't like what's happening inside your arm and we're just not going to be part of this. But I don't think that's Andrew Kittredge's deal. I think if they find him healthy and effective, they would probably try to keep him.
That's fair. And you just have more time to evaluate him. Give him 2 more months before you make your decision as to whether he's on this 2026 team or not. He is 35, but like you said, there is injury history, but earlier this season. So maybe if he stays healthy for the rest of the year, you bring him back
Sorry, somewhere in your notes is a Jose Iglesias reference where the Orioles picked up his club option and traded him like an hour later.
Indeed.
It was like a month later, but they picked him up so that they had the asset to go on and trade in the winter, which is absolutely a thing that can happen with any of these guys.
Yes. $3.5 million, I believe, was the team option that the Orioles picked up on Jose Iglesias after the 2020 season. And then they immediately traded him to the LA Angels for Garrett Stallings and Gene Pinto. That, to me, that comparison would probably be closer to the conversation about Ramón Laureano, who has that $6.5 million option for next year. Ramón Laureano, like Jose Iglesias in that 2020 season, is having a season that is unlike anything he's had in his career.
Yeah.
He's having a very hot stretch. He crushed a homer yesterday against the Cleveland Guardians. Jose Iglesias, that one weird 45-game sample size that he had in 2020, I put him on my ballot for most valuable Oriole. He hit 377. He was incredible in that small stretch, and Mike Elias was so pleased to trade him for anything after picking up his option in 2021. And the LA Angels are just one of those teams that tends to fall for that kind of stupid stuff every year.
Yeah. Where are they at? What do we got?
I don't know if. So let's talk about Urías first. I agree with you that Ramón Urías is right now through the first 3-4 months of the season is giving you 1 WAR according to Baseball Reference. For a bench player, that is great. That guy is hard to find. That guy is going to be worth but he's going to be worth what you pay him this offseason in arbitration. He is a quietly valuable player on this team that next year should have Jordan Westbrook healthy at third base, Gunnar Henderson healthy at shortstop, Jackson Holliday healthy at second, and some conglomeration of Ryan Mountcastle, Coby Mayo, whatever it is at first base. And Ramón Urías doesn't see the field all that often because all those guys are healthy. That player is still valuable.
Yeah.
So to me, Ramón Urías, if you want to be good next year, I would keep him. For Ramón Laureano, I don't know how real this first half is for him. We've seen him get hot in previous stretches of his career, and then it's never lasted. I don't think next year Ramón Laureano is going to give you a 840 OPS like he has been giving you this season. But again, he has shown that he is a valuable bench piece at the very least. And for a team that is so lacking in right-handed hitting outfielding, cough, cough, Tyler O'Neill was supposed to be this guy.
Yeah.
Ramón Laureano should help you next year. And at $6.5 million, that's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, you just take that, and if he doesn't perform to this level, if they keep him around and he sits in a roster spot all winter and never really kicks on, that's not going to kill you.
No.
Because you're not going to be counting on him to be there. You are going to be counting on probably Tyler O'Neill to be better than he was this year.
Which, side note, if the Orioles had signed Tyler O'Neill to a 2-year deal with a team option for the second year at this price point, and they had signed Ramón Laureano to a 3-year, $50 million deal, how would we view Mike Elias's offseason differently?
Yeah. I mean, they're getting the production they wanted from their right-handed hitting outfield free agent, just not the one that they wanted.
Not the one that they expected or wanted. And it feels like the Trevor Rogers conversation from last year, where it's like, all right, if you gave up Kyle Stowers and Coby Mayo, Kyle Stowers and Connor Norby to get Zach Eflin, and you gave up those 3 lower level minor leaguers to get Trevor Rogers, you'd feel a whole lot better about the pieces that you traded away.
And not to, I'm not the Tyler O'Neill guy, but that conversation no longer happens. And because Trevor Rogers is now good, and I'm interested to see. I mean, I think everyone knew what Tyler O'Neill was when the Orioles signed him. I don't think they knew that this was going to be how he performed this year, but I think everybody knew what he was. And this is probably like the first percentile outcome in a bad way.
It has to be. I mean, he's hitting close to 180. He has spent most of the season on the injured list. This has just been a disastrous season for Tyler O'Neill. So you are of the opinion that you keep Ramón Laureano?
Keep the Ramones.
Keep the Ramones. Keep Andrew Kittredge.
Yes.
Deal away. Do you think the Orioles will trade Ramón Laureano?
I think if they're overwhelmed, they will. I mean, I think that is the type. If somebody really needs him, if the Orioles could have traded for Ramón Laureano last year, they would have given a lot up for this version of Ramón Laureano last year. I would argue more than he would be worth. But like, if somebody wants to do that, by all means, let them.
Sure, that's fair. All right. Finally, let's get to a group of guys that was not in this tier system, but I think has varying degrees of trade value. Zach Eflin was left off this list because he was on the injured list at the time. He still is on the injured list. He's made a couple of rehab starts in the meantime. His first 3 starts of the season were terrific. Then he went on the injured list, and it's been downhill since then. ERA close to 6 in 12 starts. Free agent after this season, 31 years old. I just don't know if any team, you said it 2 weeks ago, and I think it's going to prove to be true, that Zach Eflin could get one showcase start before the trade deadline to show teams, hey, I'm healthy and I'm still good, before the trade deadline, and the Orioles will just have to see if teams buy it. Do you still believe that?
Absolutely. It's probably going to happen this week, right? It seems like it's going to happen this week. And I think in a way that was not true at the beginning of the season, and really hasn't been true in a lot of Zach Eflin's career. Like, it's going to be there are 2 polar outcomes. Like, he's going to have a really good start, or he's going to give up like 7 home runs.
Yeah.
There's not like, he's not going to like muddle through 3 1/3 like we saw last night, and like 3 1/3, 3 runs and in a million pitches. Like, that's not going to happen. I think we're talking a little bit more extreme. And I don't think if he has one of his 4 home run starts, it's going to disqualify him from being somebody the team's target. He has a long track record of pitching well. And I think if he looks healthy and it's just a matter of like making a couple of mistake pitches, you probably still see him. But he's got an interesting, they have an interesting choice to make, because you probably can bet on Zach Eflin if the market doesn't develop.
Yeah.
You can bet on him pitching well in August and September and being in a position to get and reject the qualifying offer or take it. And then you have a little more optionality with that in a way that they don't with some of these other guys. So I don't think they need to trade him, but if he's good, he's going to have a market, because the Orioles saw what that market was last year and they participated in it.
Yeah. 3 other guys we don't need to spend much time on. Gary Sanchez, I think he's wholly untradeable because he is hurt and going to be basically done for at least another month. Tomoyuki Sugano, I think his performance in the last month has been so abysmal that I don't think he's tradable at this point. And Tyler O'Neill, I've seen so many people online say, trade him for what you can. I hate to break it to you. Nobody wants Tyler O'Neill right now.
Yeah, and I mean, the Orioles signed him when they did. They jumped the market on him because he was worth the most to them at that point in the offseason, and that's not to say that there was not going to be a market otherwise. It was just the Orioles had a specific need, and they signed him for it, and now that asset is theirs.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Do you think Sugano is wholly untradeable as well?
I think that he is with the team again that valued him the most.
Which team would that be?
The Baltimore Orioles. He's on the Baltimore Orioles because they really liked what he did. And I think it's pretty meaningful that, he is here, and it's going to be weird. I don't know. I think there's a lot more questions about how you handle a trade like that, but it seems like in a way that was not the case a month or so ago. There's just a lot more questions around him, and that's not necessarily the scalable asset and something that you want if you're contending. We've talked about the Charlie Mortons, and regardless of what he's doing, he gave up 7 runs his last time. He also pitched 5+.
Yeah.
And you're going to get that. That's what you need in August and September if you're a good team. Yeah, you want to have a bunch of studs who go out there and pitch 7 innings, give up 1 run. So the Dean Kramers of the world.
Yeah.
But you also need guys who are just not going to kill you. And that if it's August 17th and you've played 19 games in a row, even if you lose, Charlie Morton will pitch you into the 6th inning as long as something terrible doesn't happen. And you can't say that about Tomoyuki Sugano. You can't count on that if you're another team.
Yeah.
So that is the challenging part about his market for me.
I just saw a comment on Facebook as we were live every week on Facebook, YouTube, and X about trading Trevor Rogers. Wouldn't be for me. I just wouldn't trade away somebody that has shown significant promise this year.
It would be incredibly funny. It would be incredibly funny.
It would be very funny. How about you get back 2 guys from my... No, that's never going to happen.
No, they could get more. They can get more for Trevor
Yes.
Rogers right now than they traded away for him.
Yes.
And if you don't want to be in the Trevor Rogers business anymore, I know I said it would be really funny if they made him the extension guy. It would be a lot funnier if they traded him.
It would
because they have done all this work and it has worked. But if you don't want to be in this business and you want to sell high, now's the time to do it.
Exactly. All right. We're going to do our minor league check-in on the other side of this quick break.
For the 5th year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
All right, time for our minor league check-in. Let's just look at the 2025 draftees. I did a podcast at the end of last year with Carlos Collazo of Baseball America, and now they have been slotted into Baseball America's top 30 list of Orioles prospects, and we have 7 guys that were drafted by the Orioles that are now in the top 30. Ike Irish at number 4 behind Samuel Basayo, Coby Mayo, and Esteban Mejia, and we have to talk about Esteban Mejia at some point because that's crazy high ranking for him. Vahiva Aloy comes in at number 7. Caden Bodine at number 10. The still unsigned Slater DeBrun at number 11. Joseph Giroir, the left-handed pitcher, at 14. JT Quinn at 24. And the still unsigned shortstop Colin is Yeaman.
I'm sorry, I can't help you there, Paul.
Yeah, it's okay. Who is from University of Cal Irvine.
Anteaters.
Is there. Is that their mascot?
Yeah.
You know that they're the Anteaters, but you don't know how to say Yeaman's name.
I've had to know about that they were not had to. I've had the opportunity to know about the Anteaters before I had the opportunity to know how to say his name.
That's for a separate podcast. He comes in at number 25. John, I know everybody's going to be closely watching the status of Slater DeBrun. They have until July 28th at 5 p.m. to sign their drafted picks. Just about everybody else has been signed who is who is a top 10 round pick. But if Slater DeBrun does not sign, I think a lot of people are going to be angry at Mike Elias for trading Brian Baker for the 37th overall pick. But that would ignore the fact that they would get the 38th overall pick next year if Slater DeBrun does not sign.
And that would be a year when they have their Comp A pick as well, and they're picking near the top of every other round because they're not going to make the playoffs.
There we
go. And that would set it up another year of having a lot of early picks and a high bonus pool. Maybe there's a qualifying offer pick in there somewhere too. I think that's a risk worth taking. I know that these things always go down to the wire. I think there's a couple 100,000 of worth of wiggle room from what I've seen. I
believe so. Just about everybody has signed at their slot pick value, with the exception of JT Quinn signed a little bit under his slot value.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit with the two first day pitchers.
Joseph Sherwatt did as well.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks to kind of the draft that they had, where they kind of got good value and didn't really play a lot of these games. I don't even know if you want to call it games. I never really cared that much when they were giving guys, when they were trying to spread the money around before. So I definitely can't care now when they're making 4 first day picks and giving most of them full slot, and giving a little cuts on these pitchers so they can get to their high school pick. It's pretty fascinating to see how these guys slotted in. I think this is a very well-regarded draft in a way that, it's kind of the same with the Ravens. I'm not going to cross podcast feeds here, but the Ravens draft every year. Now it's like they take somebody in the first round, and all the analysis is always like, oh, what a Ravens pick.
Yep.
Now with the Orioles. That happens with the Orioles. Whether it's a guy who does everything well, like Irish, or somebody who does some things really well and like need to have their offensive game tuned up a little bit. People are like, oh, what an Orioles pick. Like, there they go again. Like, that's kind of where we're at. And I think for all the things that have gone wrong this year, the fact that they had this draft and it's been as well received as it has been by the industry, we're not going to put a flag on the warehouse for that, but it means something that these players have slotted in where they are.
Absolutely. All right. That just about does it for the Banner Baseball Show today. Like, rate, review, subscribe anywhere that you get your podcasts. And of course, subscribe to the Baltimore Banner, $1 for 6 months to get all of John's great work, and Danielle Allentuck, and Andy Kuska, and Kyle Goon. We're going to have an episode at some point next week, probably on Tuesday. And I can imagine we might have some breaking news podcasts to discuss some trades at some point over the next 8 days.
Is Tuesday the doubleheader?
Oh, geez, is it?
Yeah.
Thank goodness that the Orioles have off on trade deadline day. I'll just say that much.
Will be at least in air conditioning.
That's right. Thanks so much for tuning in. For John Meoli, I'm Paul Mancano. If you write us a 5-star review, by the way, I'll read it out here on the show. I read out a couple last week, John. They were very delightful.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Thanks so much.